Hello, everybody, and welcome to No Strings, Just Candor. And this would be my episode 1 of season 1. Hopefully, there could be a lot more seasons and more episodes, but this is already a big feat for me, being able to be here in front of you and technically speaking to no one. So this is huge. I never thought that I would ever muster the courage to sit in front of a camera and open up a space that would feel safe. And those are things that I want to be able to accomplish with this podcast, which we're going to definitely be able to go into just a second. So this intro is not going to be very long. This intro is going to be about me, who I am, what I want this podcast to be, what I don't want it to be, the reason I'm doing this. And I don't want to start off with a title. I don't want to start off with all of this fanciness around my experience in people operations, because it's one of the main reasons why I'm starting this podcast. I don't want to only focus on titles. I don't only want to focus on companies that I have been a part of, whether they are really impressive or not. If you want to know more about me and you want to know more about my experience and skills, that's definitely something that you can reach out about and we can discuss further. But for the meantime, I want this podcast to be just exactly what the name says. I want it to be no strings, just candor. I want it to be a safe space for many people to share their experiences despite their titles. A lot of times I would hear an executive, a CEO, a COO talk about the market right now and about how being unemployed feels and what they're doing. But in reality, they haven't been unemployed for 20 years. They haven't been unemployed for 30 years. So why is it that we continuously find podcasts? We continuously find these forums that have people that are not connected to the real life situation. I'm not discrediting anybody. I'm definitely not discrediting the hard work that it can take to be a CEO or the hard work that it can take to be a CEO or C suite or a leader. I don't want to do that at all. I don't want this podcast to be around that at all. But what I do want is this to be a place of empowerment, of representation. I want someone to be able to look at this podcast and say, I can relate. I'm not alone. Representation matters so much to me. I am a Hispanic, gay, Latina, and growing up or being in my career growing up, I didn't really see any type of representation of that. So I didn't really have a blueprint. I didn't really have anything that I can say, this is what I want to follow. These are the steps that I need to take. So I've always wanted to do that. And for those that know me, know that public speaking is a huge thing for me. It makes me want to throw up the moment that I think about talking in a room more than 3 people. So the fact that I'm putting this out there goes to show that this is what I want. I want there to be rawness. I want to give a voice to those who are unheard or to those who may be looked over. I recently had a conversation where I was asked, or in the conversation, it came up as into what I wanted to do with HR, what was my end goal. And I said I wanted to amplify employees' voices. And I was told that HR is not the place for that. And while it was a hard thing to hear, whether it was correct or not, it only pushed me further to make this podcast. Because maybe this is the place to do this. Maybe this is the place to amplify the voice of those employees that nobody really hears. I want to be able, my end goal, I want to be able to sit minorities, to sit underprivileged individuals, to sit people who really, truly deserve to sit in these chairs and be able to put in their opinion. I want them to have a voice. I don't want to sit in my next boardroom and look around and have replicas of a person that think the same, have had the same experiences, have talked the same, grown up the same. I don't want that. And again, I'm not discrediting experiences. Everybody has had hard experiences despite ethnicity, race, religion, sexual orientation, and so forth. I'm not discrediting that. Please do not take that as that. But what I am saying is that we need to start thinking diversely. And diversely doesn't really mean what I have seen a lot of leaders think that it means. Thinking diversely is uncomfortable. The topic of DE&I is uncomfortable. And I don't want to get too much on DE&I because I don't want this whole podcast to be about DE&I. Now, what do I want it to be? I wrote it down because it's my first episode and it's going to be bad, guys. I already said it was going to be a dumpster fire. I hope it's good. I hope you're still with me and did not turn off this video after the first 1 or 2 minutes. But I promise I am hoping that I'm only going to get better. So I wrote it down and I wrote down my whys. And I said, I want to share experience despite the titles. I want to give a voice to those who are unheard or maybe underrepresented. I want to talk about uncomfortable topics. I want to talk about uncomfortable topics about D&I, but I also want to talk about uncomfortable topics such as why are most HR leaders, despite them being in a C-suite title or C-suite position, why are they reporting to anybody else other than the CEO? I want to be able to talk to a CEO. I want to be able to talk to a COO, and I want to be able to know what is the reasoning behind it. I want to know, I want to better understand. I am working on healthy conflict. I'm working on getting better at healthy conflict. So this is going to be a true tried way of me trying to do that. I will have guests and you guys are going to have to work with me. Sometimes I'm going to agree with them. Sometimes I'm not. I'm still healing, going to therapy, doing all these things. But like I said, bear with me. Now, I also want to get insights on how to really change the workplace. I want to talk to individuals who have been laid off. And these individuals that have been laid off, I want to hear, if circumstances were not able to be changed, if undoubtedly you were still going to be laid off, what would be different? What could someone have done different? Right? Representation. I already said it. When it comes to representation, this is huge for me. I want to be able to have some type of presence that somebody else will see and say, maybe there's an accent in her voice, or her experiences are pretty much like mine, or whatever it is. I want to have a presence where others can see that they're not alone. I want to have a presence where others can nod and say, yeah, you know what? I thought that was just me, but it's not. And I want to bring in guests that do the same. I want your brains to start thinking differently. I want you to be open to the different opinions that we're going to have in this podcast. I want you to be open to the different thoughts and experiences. I really wanted this podcast to be titled All About Nothing, just because I want to include so much. But like I said, it's my first time. I don't know anything about podcasting. So I'm going to start where I think I want to start, and then we're going to go from there. You might see me flourish into a super motivational speaker, which I hope not, because I may not be very motivating, or maybe I would be an extraordinary HR speaker. It doesn't matter. I want to be raw. I want to be real. I want to be in front of you and say, I'm a leader. I have been an executive. I have sat in these meetings. And guess what? I have ADHD. Half of the time I can sit in a chair for longer than 10, 15 minutes without having to fidget with something. I space out. Sometimes I'm not prepared, but I am good at my job. And I want others to understand that perfection does not need to be the enemy of good. I need you to understand that the higher up or the C-suites that you see or the leaders that you see, we're not perfect. They're not perfect. And to think that you need to be perfect to put your name in the hat to get there is not necessary. Many of you are so prepared. If you want to be in a leadership seat, many of you are so prepared to be there. And if you're not, what I advise you to work on, emotional intelligence. My therapist at all times tells me emotional intelligence, EQ. This is what you work through. Understanding others, being able to sit there uncomfortably, trying to understand others' point of views, and still being able to say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. And maybe the whole point of this podcast is learning how to agree to disagree. So I know I rambled there for a second, and I'm gonna, we're gonna continue about what I want this podcast to be. And let's say, to show that you're not alone, we covered that. To listen to different perspectives, I think we covered that as well. To be able to work through healthy conflict, that one's a little bit more for me. If you want to join me on my healthy conflict journey, please feel free to. It's going to be hard, it's going to be uncomfortable, but we can do this together. To figure out what the fuck executive presence is, I have a really strong opinion about executive presence. I have a strong opinion about a lot of things, but I have a strong opinion about executive presence. And we'll definitely jump into that into a whole nother episode, because that should be an episode on its own. But please understand, executive presence, that word, not great for me. To agree to disagree at times. Maybe you're listening to me and saying, I love executive presence. I know exactly what it means. And I disagree. I don't think there is a right or specific way to explain executive presence. And if you do know it, or you try, or you're telling me, yes, I do, please reach out to me. I would love to have you in this podcast so that you can explain it to me a little bit later. Highlight imperfections and flaws. Like I said, we're not perfect. I am incredibly flawed. Am I good at my job? 100%. I love what I do. The passion that I have for people operations is so much. It is so filling. It is so apparent once I start talking about it. I love human resources. And why do I love human resources? Because I think there's so much work to do. And while, yes, this is probably a conversation for my therapist, it's the fact that we can fix it. It's the fact that we have the tools, we have the resources to fix it. We just don't have enough people talking about it. In a conversation, they gave me the textbook answer about HR. They told me that the HR is only there to protect the company, to make the company successful, and to make the company run. And I think that in order to do all of that, your employees matter. Your employees are the ones that have to speak on how to make that company better. What are you doing wrong? A lot of startups will say, we're out to do something that has never been done before. Great. So let's do things that have never been done before. Let's push boundaries. Let's talk about how much inclusion. Let's talk about why it is that CPOs and CHROs and all of these HR C-suites are reporting into CFOs and COOs. And like I said, I want to be able to have different perspectives. So if you do have a different perspective, or if you are able to give me an actual reason why this is happening, I would love to hear from you. Would love it. I would love to have that conversation. And I want to do a disclaimer here. I get excited. I get passionate. And this is how I talk. Sometimes I'm told I'm too abrasive. Other times I'm told I'm too nice. And I'm trying to figure out that middle. I'm trying to figure out myself as I grow. And being vulnerable with all of you for a second, one of my biggest fears starting this podcast was that a potential employer was going to see it and say, we're going to move away from that. And it's still a fear. But like I said, I know how to do my job. I have been in people operations for quite some time. I have loved and read books and talked to people and built a network and all of this, and it only makes me love it more. So if an employer were to see this podcast and say, maybe move away, I might be okay with that, because I cannot continuously show up as someone that I'm not. It is exhausting, and that is what leads to burnout. We're going to go over so many different topics that I am hoping we can. Like I said, I'm hoping this is not an ADHD fixation where I completely end up saying, never mind. It took me so much to be here in front of you. And I am hoping that I will speak to you. I'm hoping that you and I would be able to connect. And if we don't, that's okay. If we don't connect, if we can't see eye to eye, if you're just saying this is absolutely horrible, that's okay. If you want to support me, if you want to cheer me on, if you want to see me evolve from getting on the camera and just pretty much talking to maybe a little bit more structured episodes later, great. I love that for me. I love that for you. And I really want to build a community where rawness, openness is not a deciding factor on how good we are at our job. I don't want that to be. We're all human. We all have to show up as humans. So I want to create this safe space where we're able to do as such and continue to do a good job and continue to strive and not be overseen and not be consulted for things. And I don't care what your title is. I don't care how many years you've been in your industry. What I care about is, do you love what you do? If you don't, maybe that's another conversation for another episode. Maybe we can talk about changing careers and exploring what's really meant for you. But what I care about is that you're going to show up and you're going to be raw and you're going to be honest and you're going to let you're going to allow others to be the same. So it is what I want this podcast to be. And I'm sending it only to a select few. And I know that eventually, I don't know how this works, but I think eventually this is going to be public. But I'm really hoping that the people that I send it to are able to, one, give me feedback. And if it's about rambling, please be nice, please be kind. Like I said, I'm still trying to understand feedback a little bit better. But in all honesty, all jokes aside, I want this to be a community. I want you to feel heard. And I want to be able to put this out there in a way that corporations are saying, yeah, this is what we need to be doing. We never thought about it this way. Think of this as the unanonymous employee engagement survey. I want, if you're a CEO, if you're a leader, if you're a company, I want you to look at this and say, oh, this is what we should be doing. And this is what they mean when they say they don't feel engaged at work. And this is what they mean when they say that they don't feel motivated at work. So it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to maybe do a couple pivots, maybe not, but I want you to stick with me. Now, before I wrap this up, because I did promise it was going to be a small one, I want to talk about what we're not. We're not arguing. Remember healthy conflict? We're not arguing. I'm not here to be defensive. I'm not here to come in with my walls up. Why? One, I want to make that type of environment completely absolute. I don't want others to feel like they should be coming in with an armor. Two, I want to better understand your point of view. If you can change my mind, I will 100 admit it. I would 100% admit that maybe I didn't see something the right way. I'm just HR. I'm just people operations. I could talk to an employee who was laid off by another company and they can tell me that they hated the way something went. And I can say, oh shit, I did that. And I can say, okay, I'm sorry. Like, this is why I did it. Walk me through it. I want to have these conversations. I don't want to argue. I want to have healthy conflict. I want to have conversations. I don't want to minimize others' experience. I know you've heard me repeat it thousands of times in 20 minutes. But I don't want to minimize anybody's experiences. Everybody's experiences is their own, and everybody's experiences shape them to be who they are. And a hard experience for you is the hardest experience that you've ever gone through. So that's valid. We're not here to compare whose experience was harder. We're not here to compare and talk about why it's unfair that we consider that a sad story or a motivating story versus another one not. We're here to amplify everybody's voice. I love DEI. I'm passionate about DEI, and I will continue to call it DEI until my face turns blue, because equity just belongs. I don't care what anybody says. But I want to be able to validate everybody's experience, whether it was small or big or medium. It's not about, I'll show you mine, show me yours, tell me who's more, trauma. So no minimizing others' experience. I don't want to shame others, which kind of like means the same thing. I was writing this down as I was panicking about coming in the camera, but I'm here. I know that I should make this really this neurodivergent, disability friendly. However, I am working through this. So the words, if I were to put a caption on, I might not. It'll be hard, guys. I mean, like it would be hard. It would be very hard for me to put captions on and then probably think that the computer grabbed something for my accent and called it something else. I hope that makes sense. Also, another thing, yes, I'm HR. I am working on D&I myself. I'm working on pronouns. I'm working on being able to address everybody and not call them and not call a group of people guys. I am from Miami. That is something that I use for many times, but I do understand that that might not be the correct way. So I am learning. So please bear with me. I'm learning. We're going to get through this together. We're going to have a great podcast. Hopefully we make it past 3. I don't know who told me the statistics, but apparently podcasts don't usually do more than 3 episodes. So I'm hoping this is one of them that passes the 3 episodes. Okay, another thing. I don't want to call out companies. If I am having a guest and they are talking about their experience about a company, we will not be naming the company. We do not want to violate any NDAs around here. But I also don't want to focus on what that company is doing wrong, if that makes sense. I want to focus on what other companies as a whole should be doing right. So I don't want to hear companies' names, and you probably won't hear them. I don't want to call out others personally either. I have had my share experiences of awful conversations. I have had my share experiences of great conversations. And as long as I'm praising somebody, lifting them up, you might hear their name if they give me the permission to use their name. But if it's in a negative way, if it's in a bad way or any of those types of ways, we will not be using anybody's name. I think when it comes to that is very sensitive, and people grow, people change. And maybe this happened 10 years ago and now that person's not that person anymore. And then we're getting into a messy situation. So I don't want any real names. And if we use real names, I will put a disclaimer before it that says we changed the name. If the person's name was Patricia, I want to say, hey, by the way, this person's name is not Shannon, but she will be called Shannon from here on out. And then finally, this is a judgment-free zone. I think this goes with everything else that I have said, but I don't want to judge. If you're listening to this podcast and I have a guest, or you're listening to me, please be kind with the comments. Everybody, one of the main things somebody told, actually my little cousin told me, and I love her to death. And I was telling her how scary it was to get in front of a computer and talk to yourself. But how scary it was to get in front of a computer and be so raw and not see people's emotions immediately. I know how to read a room. This is incredibly hard. I am not reading any of you. So be kind. Be kind to my guests. Be kind to the topics. Be kind. Just be kind. The world is already shitty enough. that we can't give others some type of kindness. If you are not kind, I can't say that I'll block you because I don't think I know how to do that yet. But when I find out how to block people, I will block you if you're unkind. And be nice, right? Like, just be nice. So, overall, I think this is the end of my podcast. I really, really hope that all of you are going to continue to be with me. I really hope that the people that I send this to are still with me right now. But I really appreciate all of those who pushed me to do this. I really appreciate my support system. Shout out to my girlfriend. Um, Fantastic person. Just made 7 years on Saturday. Completely forgot about it. And we remembered 4 days after. But shout out to her. A huge rock back here, you can see with our dogs. From time to time, you might see a cameo from one of my 2 dogs. Might be 3 dogs soon, but one of my 2 dogs, you might see a cameo. That's okay. It happens. And I want to say thank you to the rest of my support system. It is incredibly humbling when others tell you that your voice matters and that others need to hear your voice. And this is one of those moments where they tell you all the time, speak out even though your voice is shaking. This is one of those times because this is truly terrifying. But I have a bucket list, not a bucket list. I will be on a TED Talk, and I'm putting that out there into the universe. I will be on the TED Talk. I practice for my TED Talk every single day, and I have no idea what I would even talk about if I were to be in a TED Talk. And then besides, I don't know if I would ever stop throwing up or passing out if I were to ever be invited to one. But aside from that, I want this to be fun. I want you to better understand. Yes, Odette, she has been a leader. She's sat in boardrooms. She's sat in front of leaders, and she looks like this, and she's dressed like this, and she talks like this. And I want to say, yes, that does not take away from my ability and my skills and my passion at all. And it shouldn't for anybody. So lots of topics that I'm hoping to be discussing in the future. If you do have any ideas on what type of topics to start off with, or any ideas on things that I should do, I am open to them. If you want to be a guest on this podcast with maybe 2 subscribers, hopefully more than that. But yeah, if you want to be in a podcast with me and just talk and have a conversation, that's fine with me. This is not going to be a scripted podcast, as you can tell. Also, bear with me. I have raging ADHD. So sometimes I might get lost. Sometimes I might trail off. And other times I will have to ask you to give me a second to collect my thoughts. So I'm hoping that you're able to do that with me. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sticking with me. And I am hoping to see you in episode 2, season 1, or is it season 1, episode 2? Doesn't matter, but I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.